everyone for this process mining cafe session about how to make your data work. And we're joined again by Gary, who just gave his presentation and shared his experience in the practice talk before. But we're also joined by two additional guests. I'm also very happy to welcome here today Carmen Lasa Gómez. Hi. Thank you for joining.
Thanks
so Carmen. Yes. So Carmen already also presented her experience some time ago at another process mining camp, right? So there she told us what she's doing at Telefónica with process mining. And we also are joined by Javier García Algarra, who used to work with Carmen at Telefónica and is now actually head of Department of Engineering at Utah University. Welcome, Javier.
Hi, how are you?
So thank you all for joining this cafe session. And we're going to talk a little bit more about process mining and data. So Gary in his presentation before already showed like that you can connect many different data sources to get this end-to-end view of the process. And also we talked about how the process owner who's responsible for the process can actually be more independent and can answer questions and understand their process much better, right? So it's kind of an emancipation or empowering tool for the process owner. But maybe to start off this discussion, Carmen, I remember your analysis that you shared as process mining camp, where you detected operational drifts in processes while analyzing different departments. And I think this type of analysis would not be possible by the department themselves, right?
Right. First of all, I work in a group responsible of the definition and auditing the best practices into our organization. Then we ensure the quality of the data generated and the activities. Then it's quite difficult to detect these drifts by the team, because they are silent or minor modification on daily behavior and are not encoded. This kind of behaviors become part of the informal group culture. They are very difficult to detect because rules are not broken. Then the teams do not consider this solution to be potentially dangerous, and they don't take care about that. That's the point why the success of our work was to be able to demonstrate with data the suspicion. After our first study, many teams asked us to do similar studies with other products, because just to have another perspective, be out of the box and have a more complex perspective. Isn't it, Javier?
Yes, we were working together, and I would like to remember you, why did we use process mining? Because we were not using process mining, I think it was by 2012, 2013. And we came across process mining because we had the need to analyze quite different processes involving different technologies, and above all, different human groups working across dozens of countries with different cultures. And really, process mining was the tool that fit our needs. No? That's when we start to study process mining. I remember we followed the Coursera course. Okay, it was a hard introduction to process mining using a prawn and such a wonderful tools. And then when we start to apply that kind of techniques to the real problems that we have, and we start using Disco by then, and we discovered that it was quite a friendly tool, and the first results were very encouraging. So the company gave us some budget to invest in this kind of tools, and we start the line of process mining analytics, the company.
Yeah. No, it's a really interesting example. Exactly, actually making the case for this kind of outside perspective, right? So a little bit the opposite of what we have been talking about before. And I'm curious, Gary, do you think that there could be some blind spots that the person, working inside a particular process might have, that actually having some kind of external view is beneficial sometimes?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, every time that we slice and dice it, take a different view of it, we learn stuff ourselves. And it's interesting to talk with some of the other team members to say, is this something that you expect? Are there other things that that pop out that look like an anomaly that we wouldn't consider an anomaly because they're saying, this thing is not working as we thought it was supposed to be built or whatever. But it does raise those gaps that look good to us, but somebody with a different set of eyes, different SME or whatever, would say there's a problem there that we don't even recognize.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes, because one of the things that we learn is processes are never as they were designed, because the human being is very creative and the human behavior is unpredictable. Okay, so if there are some flaw in the design of the process, for instance, in our case, the operation teams, instead of fixing the problem because there were some bureaucratic barriers to that kind of process redesign, they found a lateral way of thinking to overcome these inefficiencies with very creative strategies that in the long term were damaging both for the process, for the quality of the service, and also for the people that were performing this kind of creative operations.
Mm-hmm. But sorry. Okay. Then the key point I think in our work was that those people not feel that these workarounds were dangerous for the process and for the end results. It was a very short time point of view, but the impact was quite dangerous in a long term.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I see your point. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
In a way, maybe I'm just thinking, Gary isn't also taking this kind of customer end-to-end view, not just like looking at a part of the process, but at everything. That's also kind of an external view, isn't it? Like looking at everything.
It is. I mean, one of the things that we've been trying to focus on is overall from a company perspective is, can we reduce the number of unnecessary transactions that the customer has to be involved with? Because, are there things that just aren't necessary or redundant, especially on some of the notification stuff that we've seen. Every product had their own view of notifications that a customer might see. And you multiply that from 3, 4, 6, 10 products, and all of a sudden the combination of what the customer at the end of the day sees is overwhelming. So we've actually had several efforts to kind of just consolidate and say, hey, there should be just one view of what the customer is getting, even though there's multiple products to it. It has been a great learning from that perspective because we're just overwhelming them.
Yeah, so everyone looking at what the customer was notified about for just the product that they're responsible on.
Yeah, their own silo, yeah.
Yeah, it looks reasonable, but from the customer perspective, that's exactly like why you shift to the customer view, right? That you really get this kind of complete overview. Well, maybe we can pick up a question from the community, and for those of you watching, if you have questions for the Café, you can add them in the general channel on Slack as well. So Rudy is asking, processes are often crossing the departmental or even organizational boundaries and involve different systems. Therefore, I wonder who you think should own the process mining data.
Yeah, I mean, from our side, we're fortunate that we have a lifecycle component to our product methodology that we're responsible for. So John Schuler and our team has that responsibility. So he becomes a de facto data owner, and we all just leverage the data that we built collectively. And then we just take those results and go chat with whoever we need to chat with as far as who owns the other systems to look for opportunities.
Okay, so here very clear responsibility.
Right.
How was it for you, Carmen and Javier?
Well, in our case, all the data were belong to the company, and that's important because when you have a very big company, a very big organization, there is a high chance of organizing silos of information. So one of the messages of the organization was always everything belongs to the company. But from the operational point of view, the analytics team was the owner of the process mining data, because we have to gather data from different sources to pre-process them, and finally, the repository was our responsibility.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's actually a very good point that you're making, that the company is owning all the data, because sometimes we see organizations who, for a certain process, they have actually outsourced that process. Maybe IT service management processes might be outsourced and handled by an external specialized company, and then often they don't think about that, and in the contracts there was nobody paying attention, like who owns the data, and maybe then sometimes they have to pay to get their own data back for their own processes, right, to analyze it.
Yeah.
Yes, and there are also some issues with data privacy, because, for instance, we were dealing with some kind of troubleshooting forms that contain some kind of sensitive information. And perhaps it's one of the points that you have to have in mind when starting a process mining process, to have an eye on, to keep an eye on data privacy, because you are only using some fields of the huge amount of data, but you can have here personal information, for instance, of customers, telephone numbers, emails, or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely something that we pay attention to as well. Usually some abstracted key that is anonymous that we can use in lieu of anything that would be particular. So definitely a valid point, because privacy is, especially these days, is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. Really important point. Should be on the checklist for any process mining project. Yes.
Yeah. And in other hand, manage the data inside the organization. To me, it's key just to understand the origin of the data, the context, and also to know who to ask if you need some clarification or extra information about the data. Then it's quite important just not go through the data to other organization. And no, it's don't lose never the context and the origin and the purpose, the analysis.
So also the expertise, right? That's what you were saying, not just the access to the data, but you also need the knowledge so that you understand what's behind it, and that also needs to be in-house, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And if you need to enrich the data sources or the fields, you can ask for more information or to understand the information inside the organization. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Rather than having to work with external people for this.
Exactly. Yes. Mm-hmm.
That's another really key aspect for independence, right? We're talking about like being independent and being able to analyze immediately your own processes. So and knowledge and skills. So that's also a question that sometimes comes up, like what kind of skills do you need to be able to use process mining? So that's sometimes also when people decide, do I have like a centralized process improvement team that does the analysis and works together with the operational departments who build up the process mining expertise, compared to a process owner who analyzes their own data. So I'm curious, do you think there's what kind of skills do you need to be able to do process mining? And do you have any thoughts on this?
In our group, we were a unique process mining team for the whole unit of Telefónica. That was a very big unit of digital global services, and we had two kinds of people in our department. We have some developers that were in charge of the development of the pre-process scriptings to gather data and to prepare them to be analyzed with Disco. And on the other hand, we have the analytical team that were people more focused on the business side of the problem and have a high ability to talk with the different departments and to request further information. So I think you need both kinds of skills.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think from our side, we were fortunate, sorry, Carmen, that we're actually bringing the process team along and introducing it to them, because we started it on the business side, which is probably not traditional, but just because I had some experience with it before, and I've kind of been championing it with the other groups, we're bringing the process team along, which they find useful, but it is having to change their mindset a little bit, as well as any new product stuff that we're doing. We always try to start with some, what do we think the process is for project or product X? And I'm trying to, show these guys that if it's an existing process, we can tell you what it is. Start from there. Don't start with something brand new, which is, I think, the typical. And inevitably, what they come up with is oversimplified and not quite useful in reality. But if we could help them jumpstart and say, all right, start from here. This is what happens today. And then how does your new product or your new service impact these other teams, these other things? And it's much more useful to get to the reality, and I think is helpful for the developer and application builders down the road to say, these are transactions that could be impacted, or they look exactly like this. And then you can give them a concrete example of what to do. And that, I think, cuts through the chase a little bit to help them understand what is needed.
Right. And this process team you're mentioning, that's like a classical lean process improvement team in the company, or?
Yeah, Sigma-based methodology, yeah.
Yeah. That's going a little bit the other way around. You are introducing this to them, right, and they're working in the old way.
Right, right. But together it's powerful, though.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we have seen that earlier already, a little bit earlier in the camp. We've seen some nice examples for that too. Yeah. Also, Carmen, I'm wondering, in your project, you work together with the process managers in these different departments. How do you think, are they able to do this process mining analysis themselves, or did they need you to do it for them?
From the beginning, when we started, we worked very close with them just to understand the suspicion they have, and we wanted to see that we were able to do this work in our company, because we had a multidisciplinary team, analysts, as Javier said, developers, and experts in the product being analyzed. Then we worked very close with these project managers. Yeah. Just to, when we find that some result, the first step we do, where we are doing, it's always to share with the product managers, just to make the context, the correct context, and to understand, because maybe it's something wrong for us and has some meaning, and is not wrong, and in the other side, something that for the manager it's okay. With data, we can share that it's not the best practices.
I think the business people understands very well the benefits of process mining, because they can translate then into business figures. We were part of a very technical organization. Okay, so when you are part of a rather technical organization, you have to convince your colleagues that this new tool is useful. And then you have to fight to show that this is a necessary tool, because as a very technical organization, everybody thinks that they have the correct tool to solve this problem. They don't used to to think in business terms, okay? Well, and so I think the approach starting from the business perspective is quite interesting. Okay?
And remember, Javier, after our first study, we showed to the managers, and many teams asked to our team to do similar studies with other products.
Yes, but the business people, not the technical people.
Yeah.
Yes, because for technical people, well, this another tool or process mining, another technique. Why do we need another technique if we have dozens of tools and techniques? And sometimes it's difficult to show to the technical part of the company the benefit of process mining. Business people are more open-minded.
Yeah.
Some.
I think Gary has some quite close experience.
It took me a while to even get it. I've been talking about it for several years before we actually got some licenses and to actually get some traction, like you mentioned. So, but I think we can use the data very effectively once we see it.
For instance, you have an organization that has spent millions of euros or dollars in big infrastructure, big data. You have a Spark or Hadoop or something like that. Why do you need another tool that costs just a tiny percentage when we have this huge monster to crunch data? Because they are different. They are for different needs. You don't use a hammer to screw a screwdriver, no?
And I think for us, it was interesting that we didn't come from a traditional process team. So why are you guys even advocating a process tool when that's not your day job? So it was harder than I would have thought to get to this point. But now that with John helping and we have the data and they don't have to go through the data exercise anymore, we've kind of solved that for them. Now it's starting to gain traction far better than over the last few years.
Yeah.
Yes, the people that design the processes came and say, this is the process, and this is what you have to enforce. People should be working like that. And we told, but they don't working like that, no?
Right.
You can put a policeman behind every employee because the reality is what is. So you should have to rethink your process because perhaps there is something that is not very well designed.
Yeah, even the initial design is hardly anybody goes back to validate the original design. So you might as well just almost toss it out of the way and say, here's what is actually happening and start from there anyways.
Yeah, sometimes the designs are made by people who are not really that close to the actual process, right?
And it's far simplified. It's like a major box. That's a whole system. And I'm like, well, there's a heck of a lot more under the covers that you have to worry about.
Right. Now, maybe talking about the skills before, I'm curious also, Javier, you are working with students now and they're also using process mining. Do you see any differences there in how capable, how able they are to pick this up?
Well, I have been teaching introductory process mining to students, both of engineering and business administration. And the most relevant discovery is that they don't differ. There is not any difference between engineering and business administration student when they have to analyze the process. It's not a technical problem. It's more an analytical question. And if they have the right tool, they can perform equally.
Right. Yeah. Okay, that's good. And good to know.
Yes. Sorry, and
yes.
Just continue with the chat you had before. The key point to have the most of process mining is to have a mindset and a analytic mindset. Similar to change something you were talking before about process, is like with agile methodology that propose retrospectives, for instance. And many technical teams say we don't need a retrospective because we are doing well our work. We follow the process and everything is okay. Then at the point you have someone, either it's some product skill or technical skill, but a person with a mindset who find the chain and analytic, you can apply process mining. This is the point, the mindset. Yeah. For everything, for process mining, for retrospective, for everything. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's really true. It's also sometimes that's what we also tell people when they're trying to find like a first process mining project, and they're working. You always need the support of the kind of a sponsor, right, or someone who's responsible for the process. It's especially if you're coming from the outside, you cannot do it without them. And as a process miner, you know that you actually will have some questions, and you need to be able to understand the domain and ask questions about the process. And so if you encounter like a process manager who's kind of maybe crossing their arms a little bit and saying, well, surprise me with something I don't know yet or something,
exactly.
Right? That's not the mindset we're looking for. You are looking for a mindset of someone who really gets it and understands what this is about, and that it's a cooperative way of working.
And at what point we can improve our work, or what can we do different? Exactly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and for that, also we briefly touched on privacy as a key point, like on the data side, but it's also something that can be relevant in the analysis, right? That when you're really clear about what you want to do with this, what's the goal of the analysis? If people don't feel like they're being evaluated, but it's about, and that's again like coming back to what you said, Carmen, the mindset. So if the mindset is we are all improving the process together, then you can be objective and productive, and people don't get defensive or try to hide things or something like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, teams used to be defensive at first because they think you are evaluating them. But when they find that process mining can help to perform work in their processes, they start to give value to this technique, to this team, and they see you as someone that is going to help them instead of evaluating them.
Yeah.
Yes, when they say you as a helper and no, you are auditing their work. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's why it's important to do this work from an external group. I mean, external from the organization. Just to apply process mining from a group outside the owner of the data you are analyzing with Disco, for instance, or with process mining.
Yeah, if the initiative doesn't come from them directly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. It takes time also, right?
Yeah, I think one of the other things that we've seen is, and Carmen, I agree, is like you got to be naturally curious of what's happening. And the rate of change from systems changing, products changing, things are changing so fast, it's easy to miss something like this. And I think an incremental view of a process, you don't have to have a huge project to fix what you might find. It can be just almost in an agile manner to say, hey, we find these little tweaks that keep adding up to big savings, big benefits and stuff that, we have this notion that, if we can improve 1% at a time over the course of a year, we're going to make a major dent in things and continually make things better, and still maintain the speed that we need to go.
Yeah. And that's an excellent point, because in order to be able to do that, Gary, right, you need, as the person who's responsible for the process or who wants to do the analysis, you need to have access to the data, right? So maybe that's like one point we can also discuss a little bit, like how can you set up the data in such a way that it remains available for fresh analysis, so that you're independent when this new question comes up, that you can actually just go to the data and analyze it. And it's also in the community, there was a question before about the real-time integration. That's usually means that you have access to the data when you need it, right? So I'm curious, how was this solved in your situations? How how quickly could you have access to the data, new data?
Well, in our case, we didn't need real-time analytics, but yes, we have a big collection of processes, of data relating to very different processes, and then what we did was to develop a very simple Shiny application. Shiny is an error package that allows you to publish data and to pre-process them. So the service manager or something or someone like that could order to prepare the data relating to its process and analyze them with this code. Okay, they could get by themselves. They didn't need that we or something or someone of our team regenerates or reprocess the data.
Yeah, which I think is really cool because we're not yet there yet. We have to do our own data pulls every 2-3 weeks as we need it. But I think that's an evolution we'd like to get to ultimately, where it could be real time and they can pull their own data easily and then start from there.
And that was possible because we have a team of developers. Okay.
Right.
Mm-hmm. But you also have it automated, right, Gary? So it's not that you have to put in the same work every time.
Yeah, we don't have to build it. We just have to kick off the job. It takes a couple hours. So John's done a good job of combining everything, but it would be nice to get out of the middle of that too.
Yeah. So do we have? We have one. Let's pick up one more question from the community. So Rudy's asking. If the candidate engineer and the MBA candidate have the same result in their analysis, did they also point to the similar problem and proposing the same actions? So maybe coming a little bit back to the question of the background of the students in this case. So is the perspective and background from the people relevant for what they take out of the analysis, what they propose, what they get from it?
Yes, my idea is that process mining is not a technical issue; it's a business problem, a business tool for business problem. And when you get more value of process mining is when you have a business mindset and you are looking for business problems. So that's why business students may perform equally as well as engineering students. Okay.
Yeah, so a few things need to come together. Yes. So we're talking about skills. We're talking about the data access. I think there were already a lot of good tips and points that you gave to the community here in this discussion. Maybe as a closing question in this round, I'm curious. What would be your tips or recommendations for people who are starting out? Regarding data. What would you give on their way?
Well, my advice is forget about Excel. Okay, you want to do process mining, and instead of wasting a lot of your time trying to make data pre-processing with Excel or with some other kind of tool, it's better that you learn some scripting language like Python or R. Okay, I think it's a good investment of your time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the one thing I would throw out there is what I've seen over time is as you try to get deeper into some of the other systems, if you can influence the systems to make logical keys and description of the transactions themselves so that it's inherently built into the systems, it makes it much easier to digest it once you start pulling it out because you have that context like Carmen mentioned of what the data is. Let them describe in the transaction what it's supposed to do somewhere so it has relevancy from that transaction perspective afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
Any suggestions from your side, Carmen?
Yeah, for me, it's My tip is understand the meaning and the origin of the data you are analyzing, and understand this work of process mining as an exciting adventure in which you are searching for, not for problem, just for a hiding treasure.
Yeah.
Just the start of to find a solution and enjoy the trip. It's an adventure always with the data and solving problems.
Yes, process mining is fun because you find the unexpected.
Yeah,
that's the most interesting thing about process mining.
It's an adventure.
Because if you know what is happening, you don't need process mining.
Exactly.
That's true.
And you translate the suspicion, the business suspicion. You suspect something with data. Then you share evidence. And at this point, you can start to work to solve this problem and to improve maybe the process, the relationship between groups, whatever.
Yeah. Great. Well, these are, I think, perfect closing words. Don't forget to have fun. It is fun, and a lot of things can be done with process mining, as we have seen in the past days, as we have seen here today in Gary's presentation, as we have just discussed here in the Process Mining Café. So I would like to thank you all three for taking the time and for coming on here for this Process Mining Café discussion. I enjoyed it very much. Thanks so much for being here, Carmen, Javier, Gary. Thank you.
Thank you to you, Anne. Always.
It has been a pleasure. You're welcome.
Thanks very much.